Welcome to Modi Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Indian legislature to reserve a third of seats for women amid concerns about Modi's motives. China's immediate target isn't Taiwan. No, India killing a Canadian is not just like America killing bin Laden. Cricket World Cup, politics and power plays. Morning update, Saskatchewan to invoke notwithstanding clause over school pronoun policy. Indian legislature to reserve a third of seats for women amid concerns about Modi's motives. The Globe and Mail. India's parliament has passed a bill reserving 33% of seats in state legislatures and the lower house for women. The Women's Reservation Bill is designed to increase female representation, which currently stands at just 14%. The bill is expected to be signed into law by the country's president. Critics have questioned Prime Minister Narendra Modi's motives, suggesting that the bill is a ploy to attract female voters in the run-up to the next general election. Others have also raised concerns about the 6-year delay before the law comes into force. China's immediate target isn't Taiwan. Bloomberg. China has been involved in several recent quarrels, including disputing India's claim to a southern moon landing, questioning the quality of iPhones made in India, and criticizing the Philippines for sending a diver to cut a rope on an island, China claims. The confrontation with the Philippines is particularly concerning, as China's Air Force has been skirting Taiwan's airspace. While the U.S. is not obligated to defend Taiwan, it has a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines. The Philippines previously took its case against China to an international court and won recognition of its rights to an atoll in the South China Sea. The Philippines' recent assertiveness could be seen as aligning with the U.S. in defending Taiwan, which could further heighten tensions in the region. No, India killing a Canadian is not just like America killing bin Laden. The Globe and Mail. India's government and its defenders have attempted to defend the murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil by claiming that other countries also carry out extrajudicial killings. The author of this article argues that this argument of moral equivalence does not stand up. Factors such as the context of the act, the type of state committing the act and the type of state being acted upon and the type of individual involved must all be considered. In this case, the author argues that India is not morally equivalent to the U.S., which has also carried out extrajudicial killings, because India is an increasingly autocratic state that is presumptively assassinating someone it merely suspects of crimes, whereas the US only carries out such killings in lawless or rogue states and is subject to the restraints imposed by its own laws and processes. Cricket World Cup, politics and power plays. Deutsche Welle. The ICC Men's 2023 Cricket World Cup will begin on October 5 with a match between England and New Zealand, a rematch of the 2019 final. The tournament will feature 10 teams playing each other once in a group stage, with the top 4 advancing to the semi-finals. India is hosting the tournament solo for the first time, but there have been claims of unfair treatment towards Pakistan, leading to tensions between the two teams. The tournament will be played across 9 venues in India, with the final scheduled for November 19. Morning update, Saskatchewan to invoke notwithstanding clause over school pronoun policy. The Globe and Mail. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe said he will use the Constitution's notwithstanding clause to override a judge's decision to pause a government policy that requires parental permission for students under 16 who want to change their names or pronouns at school. How did Ottawa miss the memo on India, the US, and the new global order? The Globe and Mail. Canada's revelation that India may have been involved in the murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil has exposed a growing divide between Canada and its Western allies. While some allies privately confronted Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the issue, none have publicly condemned India. The situation highlights the fact that the US views India as a crucial ally in its bid to contain China. As a result, the US is willing to overlook India's human rights record and undemocratic actions. However, Canada has failed to recognize this new world order and must adjust its approach accordingly. India police say mob did not storm home of Manipur Chief Minister. Reuters. The Chief Minister of the northeastern Indian state of Manipur, Biren Singh, has denied media reports that a mob attacked his private residence. The state police dismissed the reports as false and misleading and stated that adequate security is already in place. Protests have been taking place in Manipur, which has been plagued by ethnic violence, with clashes between the majority Meitei and minority tribal Kuki communities. Over 80 people have been injured in the protests. Since violence began in the state on May 3, more than 180 people have been killed and over 50,000 have fled their homes. Some Sikhs in Punjab worry about pro-Khalistan sentiments from abroad. CBC. The dream of an independent Sikh homeland in northern India called Khalistan is at the heart of a diplomatic rift between the two countries, with the movement banned in India but enjoying some support in the Sikh diaspora. However, in Punjab, where much of the Sikh population resides, the push for independence is far from their reality as the state deals with high unemployment and a crippling drug crisis. Some Sikhs in Punjab now fear that the increased attention on Khalistan, fueled by the diaspora community, might make them targets of politicians hoping to stoke divides ahead of India's general election next year. Many Sikhs in Punjab do not support the fight for independence but do want justice for crimes committed against Sikhs in the past. They want their state to be peaceful and fear that the movement for Khalistan might brand all Sikhs as terrorists. The younger generation in Punjab is more aspirational, with many seeking to study abroad in countries like Canada, rather than supporting the Khalistan movement. How should Australia respond to India's problematic democracy? The Sydney Morning Herald. Australian MP Andrew Charlton has released a book, Australia's Pivot to India, which highlights India's rise as a global superpower. However, the timing of the book's release is awkward, as it comes just after security agencies were investigating allegations linking India's government to the assassination of a Sikh activist on Canadian soil. The killing has highlighted troubling trends in India's democracy and the central role of Hindu nationalism in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. Charlton's book, however, remains positive about India's rise and calls on Australians to support India's democracy. Social media and private partnership, inside the changes at India's space agency. Reuters. India's space agency, the Indian Space Research Organisation, ISRO, is working to rebrand itself as an approachable and transparent organization as part of its mission to become a profitable space superpower. ISRO has traditionally been seen as secretive, but it has started to adopt a more open approach, inviting young scientists, startups, investors and private industry partners to collaborate. ISRO's new approach has garnered interest from university students who had previously assumed that careers in space research were closed off to non-scientists. The Indian government expects the global commercial space market to be worth $1 trillion by 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the six-dimensional world, here to bring you the latest news and analysis from around the globe. Let's dive right in. In India, the parliament has passed a bill to reserve a third of seats for women in state legislatures and the lower house. This move is aimed at increasing female representation, which currently stands at just 14%. Critics, however, are questioning Prime Minister Modi's motives, suggesting that this is just a ploy to attract female voters ahead of the next general election. The bill is expected to be signed into law, but some concerns have been raised about the 6-year delay before it comes into effect. It's a step in the right direction, but the motives behind it remain under scrutiny. Moving on to China, recent quarrels with neighboring countries have raised concerns. From questioning India's moon landing to criticizing the Philippines, tensions are on the rise. Particularly worrying is China's skirting of Taiwan's airspace, which could further heighten tensions in the region. While the U.S. is not obligated to defend Taiwan, its mutual defense treaty with the Philippines could potentially draw it into the conflict. These power plays and disputes highlight the delicate balance of power in the region. Now, let's address the recent controversy surrounding India and the murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Some have attempted to defend India's actions by claiming that other countries also carry out extrajudicial killings. However, the author of an article in the Globe and Mail argues that this argument of moral equivalence does not hold up. The context, the type of state involved, and the type of individual targeted all play a role in determining the moral implications. In this case, the author argues that India's actions are morally distinct from those of the US, as India is an increasingly autocratic state that is assassinating someone it merely suspects of crimes. The US, on the other hand, carries out such killings in lawless or rogue states and is subject to its own laws and processes. It's a complex issue, but one thing is clear: moral equivalence is not a valid argument here. On a lighter note, let's talk cricket. The ICC Men's 2023 Cricket World Cup is set to begin in India, with a match between England and New Zealand. The tournament will feature 10 teams, with the top 4 advancing to the semi-finals. However, tensions have arisen between India and Pakistan, with claims of unfair treatment. The tournament will be played across 9 venues in India, with the final scheduled for November 19. It's bound to be an exciting event, but let's hope the tensions between the teams don't spill onto the field. In Canadian news, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe has sparked controversy by using the Constitution's notwithstanding clause to override a judge's decision. The decision in question pertains to a government policy that requires parental permission for students under 16 who want to change their names or pronouns at school. This move has reignited debates about parental rights and individual autonomy. It seems like Saskatchewan is not shying away from making headlines. Now, let's turn our attention to Canada's relationship with India. The revelation that India may have been involved in the murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil has exposed a growing divide between Canada and its Western allies. While some allies privately confronted Indian Prime Minister Modi, none have publicly condemned India. This highlights the fact that the US sees India as a crucial ally in its bid to contain China, overlooking India's human rights record and undemocratic actions. Canada, however, seems to have missed the memo on this new global order and needs to adjust its approach accordingly. It's a delicate balancing act for Canada as it navigates its relationships in this changing world. In other news, the Chief Minister of the Indian state of Manipur has denied reports of a mob attack on his private residence. The state police dismissed the reports as false and misleading, stating that adequate security is already in place. Protests have been taking place in Manipur, which has been plagued by ethnic violence. Over 80 people have been injured and more than 180 have been killed since the violence began. It's a concerning situation, and we hope that peace can be restored in Manipur. Moving on to Punjab, the dream of an independent Sikh homeland called Khalistan is causing concern among some Sikhs in the region. While the movement is banned in India, it enjoys support in the Sikh diaspora. However, in Punjab itself, the push for independence is far from the reality on the ground. The state is dealing with high unemployment and a crippling drug crisis, and many Sikhs fear that increased attention on Khalistan might make them targets of politicians hoping to stoke divides. The younger generation in Punjab is more focused on education and opportunities abroad than supporting the Khalistan movement. It's a complex issue that highlights the different perspectives within the Sikh community. Lastly, let's talk about India's space agency, ISRO, and its efforts to rebrand itself as an approachable and transparent organization. Traditionally seen as secretive, ISRO is now inviting collaboration from young scientists, startups, investors, and private industry partners. This new approach has garnered interest from university students who previously believed that careers in space research were closed off to them. India's government expects the global commercial space market to be worth $1 trillion by 2030, and ISRO wants to be at the forefront of this industry. It's an exciting time for space enthusiasts in India. That's all for today, folks. Remember, these news stories provide a snapshot of the world we live in, and it's up to us to dissect, analyze, and form our own opinions. So, what are your thoughts on these topics? I'm all ears. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.